Welcome to Grappling with a Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making to help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Yonason Goldson, and I'd like to welcome my guests. With me today is Christopher Bauer, who is a speaker, author, and consultant on ethics, compliance, and accountability. Diane Helbig is Chief Improvement Catalyzer at Helbig Enterprises, providing guidance and training to business owners and leaders around the world. And Peter Winick works with individuals and organizations to build and grow revenue streams through their thought leadership platforms and is host of the Leveraging Thought Leadership podcast. Thank you all for being with me today.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
And here's our topic. In recent weeks, two stories from the wide world of sports have made the headlines. In one, the FBI announced it had conducted a massive national takedown or nationwide takedown of two separate and illegal poker and sports betting schemes with ties to mafia families. The schemes reportedly spanned years and involved illicit gains from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, and gambling. More recently, Boston College senior Shane Hannafin was the only player to stand as the band played the alma mater after the last game of the season. He then remained on the football field for an hour. Despite a disappointing 1-10 record for the year, Shane felt compelled to linger as a demonstration of his gratitude for the opportunity to play. Fans and social media viewers alike found the story touching and inspiring. Star players make a fortune playing their games and endorsing products. Some of them leverage their sports careers to go into politics or acting. Young children of all ages look up to them as role models. So here's the question. Does their notoriety impose upon them an obligation to hold themselves to a higher standard of personal integrity? When they engage in scandalous behavior, are they more guilty than the average citizen? If we've come to expect little in moral discipline from our elected officials, is it reasonable for us to expect anything more from celebrity athletes? Christopher, you want to start us off on this one?
Well, I found myself pondering this in a very different way than the other issues that we've covered on these panels before. And what I found myself thinking is that with a relatively minimal shifting of the question, the gray for me disappears entirely. And I know this is a question, a panel that largely specifically deals with gray. And what I found myself thinking is this: it seems to ask if they're held to a higher standard suggests, I think, an awkward and maybe inappropriate point of view, which is that anyone is held to a higher standard of ethics than others. Maybe what we need to be thinking about is all of us need to be held to the same standard, but keeping in mind that some people have a greater range of influence. So they're not any more guilty, but they may be guilty of influencing more people. We talk so much about tone at the top, and there's no denying tone at the top is crucially important. But the reality is we're all responsible personally for our behavior. We're all a model for someone else. And I think we all need to rise to a similar, ideally identical level of responsibility for our behavior, remembering again, the number one, we're all responsible for our own behavior. And number two, we're all a model for someone. Some people happen to be a model for a greater number of people. And that's where the imbalance comes.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a different thought. So first off, a higher standard assumes that in this case, they actually met any standard, right? So the fact that, so we're not even there yet, right? So the fact that they were involved in illegal poker games and fixing sports betting, A, it's illegal, number one. B, even if it wasn't, or that was gray, let's give something back to Yonason on the gray side. As athletes and representatives of their team and their schools and all that, they're probably bound to some sort of ethical code or a code of conduct voluntarily that they clearly violated. So I mean, it would be nice to think about this idealized version. I was thinking of the Mean Joe Green commercial where he tosses the kid the Coke, and you're like, oh, isn't that cute and warm and fuzzy and whatever. I think that we'd like to think that, but I don't think there were any standards that they like higher than what, lying and stealing and gambling when you shouldn't. Like, they didn't even hit the lowest of the low level.
It's not a matter of lowering the bar, is that there is no bar.
or
Yeah,
finding the
I don't
bar.
see a
Yeah.
bar. Yeah, yeah.
I one of the interesting things in what you read, Yonason, excuse me, and in the questions was, do they have an obligation to, because they're in a position of being in the public, do they have an obligation to be ethical and trustworthy and all of those things? And my thought instantly went to, well, they have an obligation to themselves to have a standard for themselves and follow it. And apparently they don't. They they made decisions. I'm like really troubled by these things because I think people, more so coaches, sports coaches, than maybe necessarily the players, I think they're stewards. And I think everyone is watching, and they, by their behavior, they are influencing the behavior of others. They are tacitly saying, this is acceptable. This is okay. We can do this. And no, I mean, as a society, we have norms. Well, we did, we we should. Let me say it that way. We should have norms. You know, you used to be able to tell when someone was ethical, moral, and they wanted to be seen that way, whether they were in public or not, because they wanted to be able to look themselves in a mirror at night. So,
Yep.
you know,
And I think, yeah, I think you framed it nicely for us, Christopher, because I keep hearing the same themes kind of echoed. That there is what I think of as a spiritual, in this case, maybe a moral biofeedback at work that, something that I quote frequently from my colleague Ron Carucci, who wrote about a study in Harvard Business Review that demonstrated empirically that when people witness bad behavior, it makes them less ethical. And so, yes, we should all have a similar standard of ethics. But at the same time, I really do think that, and then we've talked about this term, oh gosh, I'm good. I can't even remember it now. Situational ethics,
Yeah.
um, which I think is a terrible, corrosive idea. Ethics don't change in principle, but situations do change. And that's why we have to evaluate every situation independently because of all the variables at play. And some of those variables are what you've all made reference to, the impact an individual can have on others. And what I would add, the advantages a particular individual may have over others, which is where that higher sense of whether we call it obligation or accountability comes
yeah.
from. So that there's this sort of, I think, a continuous tension here that sort of we're all responsible and no one's responsible.
Well, I think the other factor, and this is maybe just a different way of saying part of what you just said, is there is also an issue, particularly in the working world, but also in families, where there is the potential for coercion, right? Where there's a power imbalance of one kind or another, if someone is not just modeling, but implicitly encouraging inappropriate behavior, that obviously is a whole separate issue that needs to be addressed. Someone may have a perfectly good what we would call a solid moral code or ethical code. But if they're told, well, in this business, in this organization, in this family, we do it this other way, there's an unfair power differential there that may potentially swear them in spite of their belief system and their, what we might refer to as their ethical core.
I mean, well, think about the steroids in professional sports and the stories of young players that they saw if I don't juice, I don't have a chance.
Yeah.
So why should I play by the rules knowing that I will fail?
Right.
When if I break the rules that everybody's breaking anyway, at least I'll have a chance of succeeding.
Okay, but So wow. I guess where it's so interesting to me because the thought that goes through my head is, well, then that's not the job for you. Like that's not the role for you. If you have to do something else in order to be able to be good at it, this is not your gig. Like,
Well, but I think the
Uh,
juicing, they were all amazing. They were all professional athletes. And then to get to that, you know, beyond human level when they were all juicing, and I'm thinking Barry Bonds in baseball and all that,
sure.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you know, like the home runs are flying out of the park like crazy. To Jonathan's point, if you didn't do that, you know, your stats look bad. You're not going to be
Yeah.
drafted. You're not going to get if everybody else is doing it and you're not, you look like less of a player,
Yeah,
right?
I could compete if everybody else weren't cheating. But
Yeah,
since
it's
they're
not a
cheating, I have to
competition.
cheat in order to compete. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not endorsing this. I'm just saying I can
Yeah.
understand the
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you admit to not juicing. Okay,
No,
Just
he just
cranberry,
said he's
just
not
cranberry.
endorsing it. He didn't
just
say he
cranberry.
doesn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Don't be me.
Let's be
Yeah.
clear, right? Do you guys remember when Charles Barkley said, I am not a role model?
Yeah,
Do you
but
remember
that's
that at all?
interesting, right? So I think in this case, we're talking about athletes, they have a choice to make, right?
Yeah.
Do they want to be a good human? Do they want to be a role model? Or they just want to get the ball, make the money, and go home? Okay, that's fine. But I think there are clear market forces out there that reward those that do the right thing, right? Like remember, you know, the Tiger Wood thing with his wife going at him with a golf club, whatever. He lost, I think, within 3 days,
Yeah.
$50 million worth of endorsements.
Right.
So he clearly survived a, you know, shot in the head with a golf club from his wife. But the
Yeah.
50 million stung because nobody wanted the, you know, the Nikes of the world and all those brands didn't want to be associated
Right.
with all that.
Right.
Right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that goes to your
but I
point
like the
earlier,
Charles
Diane.
Barkley piece because to some degree you could say I didn't, you know, listen, if you're a teacher, if you're a certain professions, I think it's implied that, yeah, clearly this is part of who you are and what you do. Maybe less so in others, or it's not really what they want to be judged by. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Except
mean,
that
I guess I
children,
find
I'm
I'm
sorry.
stuck on my original thought. I think once we excuse ourselves for being role models, it's both disingenuous, especially as a celebrity, but even if you're not a celebrity, and I think it sets a terrible tone. It's an implicit relieving ourselves of responsibility to do the right thing.
Oh,
I don't think we're anybody suggesting that we're exempt because we're not famous. Um, it's more that with, with privilege, I hate that word, with, with opportunity, with success comes an added level of
Yeah, oh
accountability.
yeah, no argument, which is again part of why the Barkley thing. I mean, I think I get where he was coming from. I just don't buy it.
oh, I see. I get where he's coming from, and I don't agree with him,
Yeah.
right? Because children grow up idolizing successful athletes, idolizing successful, you know, I mean,
As do plenty of adults.
thank goodness, right? Well, so you wear that. And what's weird for me is I think you should want to wear that. I mean,
Well,
it's sort of
that's not
making
weird, Diane. I'll
excuses
know.
for being bad. Well, I didn't
Yeah.
want to be a role model anyway. Well, okay, good for you, but really?
Yeah, I still remember a comic from Mad Magazine when I was a kid that, it's like then and now, and the then, and this is in the 70s. Uh, the then was, eat your vegetables if you want to grow up to be big and strong like Sandy Koufax. And the next one is, I don't care what Joe Namath says about booze and broads. Eat your food.
Yeah, it's always been a thing. It
Well, but I
this
think it's
whole
a little different today, right? So I'm thinking, you know, when I grew up, the Yankees of the 70s, I mean, these were amazing athletes, the Reggie
yeah,
Jacksons and the three home runs and all that. But then you see all these documentaries that, you know, Billy Martin was out of his mind and this one was drunk and this one was doing like, okay. And it's like, okay, we didn't see all that because it's not
yeah,
like media and social media. We saw them as a kid as athletes that did amazing athletic things. We
right.
didn't know that, you know, Joe Namath was going to, I mean, I guess we did Studio 54 with the champagne and the crazy furs and all that. He was the start of that sort of
Yeah.
celebrity craziness, but most of it is do your job on the field and, you know, whatever the other things you're doing, we didn't hold you that standard. Now with
Right.
social media, they're on 24/7, right? So
We
it's
did hear about Pete Rose and the gambling, and if you go back further, there was Shoeless Joe Jackson.
yeah.
Was saying.
Yeah.
So that there were scandals.
Sure.
Sort of
Right,
to your
but take
point.
Pete Rose. So the issue with Pete Rose is he was a gambler. Okay.
Yeah.
Now today, the
Yeah.
world might say, "Oh my God, he's got a disease, he needs help, he needs intervention." Like the culture's changed. Let's not even go there.
Yeah.
But he didn't make it into the Hall of Fame because he gambled. He never gambled on a game, allegedly, and they think they've proven this to be true. Never gambled on a game that he had anything to do with the outcome. So then you say, okay, well then let's judge him. Okay, so maybe he's not a great person because he was a degenerate gambler. Okay, whatever. But on the field, he was one of the best. But he'll never
Right.
be in the Hall of Fame. Like that's kind
That's
of
interesting. I had never heard that. I
he
thought
never
that he
gambled on a
was.
game that, as
Yeah.
far to the best of my knowledge, and they did all the research, he never threw a game. He never gambled on a game that he was involved in. He was a degenerate gambler, full stop, right?
Yeah.
But then when they threw him out, they said, and he'll never be in the Hall of Fame, and here's the repercussion. Like, I don't think those same repercussions would happen today.
Yeah, and I would even question whether they should have then. I mean, not that being a degenerate gambler is something we approve of,
Right.
but but isn't that sort of the same idea, or wasn't presumably their reasoning the same? That we want Hall of Famers to be models of
Exemplary.
some sort of standard of behavior,
Yeah.
even if it has
Well,
nothing to do with the game.
I think it was more of baseball is all American, wholesome, whatever,
Uh-huh.
and it sullies the brand of baseball. But
Uh-huh.
all who
Oh, but
play
that's
Yeah.
the same
baseball
thing,
know better.
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's to your point, Diane, that you said, shouldn't we all have standards? Of course we should. Um, at the same time, there is social pressure. I mean, peer pressure is not always a bad thing. If
Sure.
I know that my peers are not going to accept me if I sink to a certain standard of behavior, I'm more inclined not to go there.
Right.
And to your
Right.
I
point,
also think it's
Peter, once it becomes
interesting,
the norm
go
that
ahead.
people, we don't have standards, well, why should I if nobody else does?
I think it's interesting how many contracts and how many industries have moral turpitude clauses, and yet the actual taking of those in any way seriously is very selective. Everyone
Sure.
signs off on it as part of the job, but something has to damage the brand. At least seems to me, something has
Yeah,
to
I
damage the
agree.
brand before anyone
Right.
says, "Oh, actually, we're
Right.
going to
Right.
call you out based on the moral turpitude clause."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but in
It's
this
got to be
case,
impacting. Yeah.
with this behavior of what they were doing, I mean, they were not making shots in basketball. These basketball players were intentionally missing shots,
Yep.
but they were throwing the game. And so,
No, they weren't throwing the game though. There were all these
Shitty
crazy
well,
points.
side bets on DraftKings and all that that really didn't have a material outcome to the game of how many free throws or something
it was the
somebody made.
props. Right.
And there's all this crazy side bets because there are today, which is
Right.
I think it's a different standard than throwing a game. I don't think it's a good thing to do, clearly, but if they hold back a little bit and then there's some sort of reward, it's bad.
Well, there was though, because then they
Yeah.
were betting on those games that they were, they were betting on that spread.
Yes,
And then they were directly creating
right.
that spread, right?
Mm.
I mean, I can say I am on, I gamble, right? I'm on those sites. I hate it now.
Right.
I'm going to stop. It's not fun anymore because it's rigged.
All right, but that's a different ethical question. So what I was reading about these poker games is, okay, they were illegal poker games. Great. There are illegal poker games you can go to all over the place.
Sure.
So is it
That's
worse
not
that
the
the
problem.
guys that got suckered into playing these poker games got suckered into a rigged game? Is that an ethical violation that if you're playing an illegal poker game, you still expect it to be held to the standard of wait, this is how
Right? Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's a
Right?
great
Like,
question.
Yeah,
The
if
better
it's
question-
illegal or not. Yeah.
Well, if you can't
Yeah.
trust the mob running a poker game, who
I
can you trust? Like,
mean,
it's
come
a horrible
on.
thing, right?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, write your congressman. Who do you go to complain
I
to?
know. Who
Talk
do you
about
go
the
to
peer
complain
pressure.
to? the
Yeah.
FBI.
Anybody remember William Bennett? He was really prominent for a while. Wrote best-selling books on morals and ethics, The Moral Compass, and I
Yeah.
forget what else. And it came out that he was a compulsive gambler, and he had lost millions of dollars gambling. Um, Except he could afford to.
Uh, uh,
So that was his defense. His defense was, I never put my family in danger. I never raided anybody's accounts.
yeah,
It may not be the most, savory habit, but I wasn't hurting anybody except possibly myself by
right.
doing that. And I think that much of the media blew up the story because I really believe they love to go to town on anybody who promotes themselves as moral. We're going to find something in this guy's background
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
can show. Oh no, they're all corrupt.
Right.
But I remember feeling the same thing. If you're going to put yourself out there as an authority on ethics, an authority on morality,
Yeah,
then you really need to be very circumspect
yeah,
in every aspect of your life.
I think so.
Well,
Huh? Oh, we have a well.
well, that makes I mean, as far as a public relations issue, 100%. When you pull it back from PR,
Uh-huh.
if we feel like there is such a thing, I mean, there is such a thing as legal gambling, right?
I do it.
You can argue that it may be, sort of, you may have a religious um, reason to say that it's a bad thing, but the fact is it's not only legal, but it's wildly encouraged. The fact that we have all the online gambling now and all that too, right?
Yeah.
So is it in fact a violation of being an upright person to do something that is in fact 100% legal and encouraged by society? I don't know. Again, from the standpoint of how do you appear to society, I can see that that could be a major black mark against you. But is it in fact crossing some sort of ethical line?
I think it depends on
Uh,
what he's preaching,
yes. Well,
right?
100%. To me, that's quite different than the anti-abortion politicians with, side relationships that they force abortions on. Um,
No doubt, but there is, I think this comes up from time to time, uh, keeping a distinction between what's legal and what's ethical.
Uh-huh.
Just because something's legal does not make it ethical.
absolutely. But is gambling unethical?
Well, so then, yeah, right. So
Fair
then we have to
gambling, at
get to those
least.
types
Well, then we
of
get to the
Yeah.
degree to
Well,
where,
right. I mean,
right?
is it worse for me to lose $1,000 gambling, not that I ever have, than for Bill Bennett to lose 8 million? He might be able to afford the 8 million better than I can afford the
yeah.
1,000.
Yeah. Well, and of course there's a side issue within the issue, which is the ethics of casinos, right? You have machines there that are very carefully calculated and
Sure.
calibrated to relieve the maximum amount of money from the maximum number of people through
Yep.
very, very carefully researched reinforcement schemes. Is that ethical? It makes my stomach churn to think so, but it's culturally accepted.
Well, they're also very upfront about it. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
the places,
I don't hear anyone
That's
denying it.
true. That's
we
right.
give back 98 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, well that's actually pretty good.
Well, and think about what
But I
that
think
translates into.
you don't accidentally wind up in a casino and don't realize where you are, right? And along that line of thinking, Christopher, do you walk into McDonald's and say it's unethical that they're selling you things that are filled with salt, sugar, and cholesterol?
Right.
Nobody's thinking a Big Mac's going to extend their life expectancy, right? Like, so I don't know. As long as if the machines aren't rigged and the game is fair and they're not. I've been to casinos where they won't allow anyone to play anymore because they've had too much to drink or they're
Yeah,
you know,
Right.
there are
yeah,
rules,
Yeah.
Whether you think it's right or wrong, whatever, but I don't think the casino is doing anything illegal. They're taking, to your point, the science behind that and the biochemistry and the dopamine, and like it's far more sophisticated today than
Right.
it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were never at an advantage as an individual. You are far more of a disadvantage today.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I just think it's something that we tend to, I think the McDonald's example is equally apt, right?
Yeah.
That because we have cultural norms that say this is acceptable, we forget that we're encouraged to engage in activities, whether it's eating or gambling, that are, fiscally or in terms of our health, really wildly inappropriate.
So do you think there's a line beyond which, because the things that, gambling and eating food that is not healthy are choices that individuals make for themselves. This whole thing with these players and these poker games and whatnot, these are people choosing to do something unethical that hurts other people. So is that the line? I mean, is there a line? Because yes, we have cultural norms that say McDonald's is okay. But it's I don't know. I feel like we
Well, I
get to a
think the
point
sports
where,
piece, it not only was it unethical, but it's illegal
yeah,
to change
true.
the outcome of
Yeah,
something.
0 for 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think there is a basis other than were these people coerced? Did like why would they do that? They're doing that for money,
Yeah.
right? Then the question becomes, okay, that's really short-sighted because if they had half a brain, they'd realize like the few dollars that they made relative to the potential is
Right.
really silly and stupid,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if it's unethical to be stupid. It's just not good to be
That's,
stupid.
yeah, it's not advised. Yeah.
It's not advised, but like
It's
when you
not
look at like
advised.
when you go
And
back.
yet,
No,
yeah.
but when you go back to Shoeless Joe and throwing the World Series and you read the history of that, there was relatively big bucks on the line for that. Not that that makes it
Uh-huh.
right and wrong, but you can almost say, wow, okay, for millions, you kind of get it. For these kids' careers are shot. They're done. Nobody, they're
Yeah.
untouchable at this point.
Yeah. Well,
It's my favorite line from Man for All Seasons. His profits a man nothing to sell his soul for all the world, but for whales.
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Well,
sure.
what about this college player? Sort of heartwarming story of this fellow that he was a bench player. They had a terrible season, and yet he seemed to have such profound appreciation for the opportunity just to play.
Yeah, I think that's it's rare and it's honorable and it's all those things,
Yeah.
right?
All of the above. Yeah.
And
And
we
it's a
wish we saw
shame
more
that
of
it's
it.
rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about college football in particular. I mean, that's where it used to be that well, it was supposed to be in the Olympics too. Free from any commercialization, free from any
Boy,
from any.
doesn't that seem dated all of a sudden?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
over.
And the reason why they changed it in the Olympics is because the Eastern Bloc countries were pouring so much money into it.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair to the Western athletes.
I
But
know, but
there was something pristine feeling about the sports. And now it just seems like another extension of um, I guess uh, collegiate industrial complex
yeah,
or the athletic industrial complex.
yeah, yeah. I think it's I totally get it why these I mean these organizations are making
Yep.
millions of dollars on these kids, right? So I get it. I think it's unfortunate that that young man stands out. And Peter, as you said, it's rare. I I wish it wasn't. I wish there were more people who had appreciation for the experiences that they have and the
Yep.
opportunities that they get, and that they express that gratitude out loud.
Well, and I think that when we go back to the college sports, the argument that was made, which was largely an ethical argument, was everybody's making money except the poor kid on the field that could get his leg cracked, right? Like the university's making a ton of money, it's funding everything. When you have an offensive coach making millions of dollars a year working for that's a state employee, something's broken. The
Yeah.
merchandise, so Nike's making money, Reebok's making money, but the poor kids on the field, yes, they get their education for free, but
Yeah.
that's like an indentured servitude of sorts. And then they said,
Yeah.
shouldn't they get a slice of the pie?
Sure.
And then the university said, well, what's the smallest slice we can give them to shut
Yeah.
them up and placate
Yeah.
it? It's kind of a hard argument to say, well, we can all make a ton of money, including DraftKings, including all that.
Right.
But the kid there that's literally, could break his neck in a football game,
Yeah.
gets nothing out of it other than not that the education doesn't have value.
And ironically, which may not be the best choice of words in this case, now that the federal government is, cutting research grants to universities, sports may be one of the few things
Funding
left.
research.
to
Only
actually
thing that
bring
brings in money,
income.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting, so something that's interesting for me about that, Peter, is that when you were talking about that, I was thinking, isn't that the what we're seeing in business as well, that these CEOs are making more money than they or their family could ever spend. And listen, I'm all for people being paid well and being paid for the value that they bring. I mean, I'm a capitalist, and you have these people who can't make a living wage, and they're the ones who make the wheels turn. So at what, like everything feels like it's off kilter to me.
But
And-
that's to
and-
some degree a tale as old as time, right? So they just had this Elon Musk deal where he could potentially make $1 trillion. So people are immediately repulsed by that. But when you actually read the details, he has to create 8 trillion worth of value to get $1 trillion.
Right.
So I'm thinking, if I were a shareholder, which I no longer am for other reasons, I'd say, yeah, I'd give someone $1 to give us
Of
8
course.
shareholders.
Of course.
Is $1 trillion an obscene, ridiculous amount of money? 1,000%, right? But
Right.
it's when the CEO's making this and the shareholders are getting screwed and the company's losing money and that to me is offensive.
Yeah. Well,
The-
that
the-
and when
the
they
biggest
totally,
pay for performance deal in the history of the world, I think.
well, and when they totally screw the company, and then they get the golden parachute where they leave with
that's
millions of
infuriating.
dollars.
Yeah.
But even when they're doing their jobs, and I've seen different statistics on this,
Yeah.
but if you compare it to the 60s, CEOs today are making between 400 and 1,000 times what CEOs were in the mid 60s, and employees is basically flat when you
Right.
adjust for inflation. So that seems really out of balance.
It really does.
And the
Yeah,
hardcore
and-
capitalists say, well, that's just the value. But there's so much crony capitalism and there's so much manipulation.
Yeah, I don't think it is value. And I, there's all that money to invest in the company, to invest, to I don't know. It's a whole.
Yeah, I think, the world is still waiting for the trickle down to trickle down.
Well, keep waiting.
It's a good theory. It's
Yeah.
a really good theory.
Yeah, great on paper. Great on paper.
Sure, I thought it sounded fabulous. Till you try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can always take the theological approach and just say, I'll get paid in the next world.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say vow of poverty, but
Well,
Carryover credits.
that's sort of the same thing.
I
got
thought he was
carryover
going to
credit.
say, you take care of your neighbor because, okay.
Oof.
Ugh. Yeah.
We got to turn this back in a more positive direction before we.
Hey, honestly, we don't want to end on a low note. We got to.
Oh, we can't end on a low note.
I was thinking, do you see The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds way back in the
Boy,
day?
that goes back a ways. Yeah.
So he got into prison and everybody's picking on him, and the guy says to him, you could have committed murder, rape, or arson. We wouldn't care less, but shaving points on a football game, that's un-American.
Yeah.
We have our
There's
standards once
there's a whole
again,
kind of
right?
wisdom in that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
there have
Vile
to be
under sad but true.
standards somewhere.
Exactly. Right.
And
Yeah.
even the most coarse people, there's a line somewhere.
Yeah.
And as long as there's a line somewhere,
Somewhere.
Somewhere.
there's hope.
Okay.
Don't go too far.
Yeah. Honor among thieves.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So what we do?
Well,
I mean, the truth is, years ago, my kids, I was never a baseball player growing up, a baseball fan growing up. But when we moved to St. Louis, and my kids got involved with the Cardinals, and and the Cardinals have always been a very classy team.
Yeah.
When Ken Griffey Jr. hit his 500th home run, the crowd gave him a standing ovation here in St. Louis. And he said afterwards, he said that, yeah, I told people if I can't do it at home, I hope I do it in St. Louis because that was the reputation. They hired a new player. What was his name? It was from Toronto, and his first time at bat, he struck out, and the crowd gave him a standing ovation. And he's going, "What's going on?
Yeah.
Where
Right.
am
Where
I?"
am I?
But is that
But there's the charity work they do and the
Yeah.
foundation that they have, and it's a nice, wholesome Midwestern team that you can
Right.
root for. But I don't pay attention anymore because the turnover of the players. I used to know who the players were.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience to try to keep track anymore because it's like a revolving door.
sort of like CEOs.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
good point.
they hop, right? They just go from, yeah.
But so I mean, it's sort of the two different ideas I'm saying at once, which is, you want to be able to get behind a team that sort of lives with a certain level of dignity and nobility and integrity.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you want to feel like there's some sort of personal connection.
Yeah.
And when it becomes too
teams
much about the
also
money, you
It's
lose
sort of
all that.
gone.
don't teams also reflect to some degree the communities that they're in?
Makes
So
sense. Yeah.
you have some teams that are all stars, rock stars. The Red Sox probably wouldn't work in Toronto, that culture, or the Yankees probably anywhere but New York. Like just, you would expect a polite, honorable team in St. Louis because it's
Yeah,
St.
you would,
Louis,
wouldn't you?
right?
Yeah.
Good to know we have something going for us out here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I would agree. I would have agreed with you before all the news came out about these players because like the Guardians, they've got players on that team who never leave. And they'll say, I just want to stay in Cleveland. It's like, okay, I don't know why, but okay, you do. But some of the people who are being indicted on this whole thing were Cleveland baseball players. So, of course, then again, the county commissioners are in jail, so maybe it
It's
does
a
reflect
Cleveland
the
thing, right?
community.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I suppose it's like everything else. It just comes down to culture.
Yeah.
Then the question is, who creates the culture?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
We create it, and it creates us, and it's that chicken and egg thing, and it's
It is.
very
And again,
difficult to.
corporations the same way.
Yeah. It's true. I hope it's a pendulum swing. I don't know if you can go. I don't know if you can go back.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. Will it swing back or not? My younger son works for J.P. Morgan, and I'm really impressed by the things I hear from him. He had his boss come in a couple of years ago, and it was mid-December, and his boss said, "Don't come back for the rest of the year." He said, "You haven't taken all your days off, and I'll get in trouble if you don't."
Wow.
And I say, "Really?" 'Cause my son loves to work. I mean, he loves what he does. He really enjoys his job. And they have a nanny, and they can, it's not like he's abandoning his family, but this is a value in the company.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is after they just built
No,
a
but
three
is
billion
that a
dollar building.
no, but is that a value? Because when you first told the story, I'm like, wow, that's a great boss. But then it was, or I'll get in trouble.
Well, because that's
Because he
built
has to
into the
make
company
sure that his
culture.
people are
Right,
following the values of the
right,
that
Yeah, he
these
says,
are the
I'll get
values.
in trouble if you don't do the right thing.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like
Because
what
it's
it brings to
very,
mind is the particularly like I guess in tech companies, the new thing is that there is, unlimited time off. But the reality is you're chastised normally if you take any time off, right?
which is why they can say it's
It's
unlimited
on
because they
at
know darn
100%.
well
Yeah.
you're not taking it.
Not going to take any, right. And you're
Yeah.
available around the clock. Yeah.
Which, if you want to talk ethical, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's like a shell game,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one that looks good on paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I
Modern
was
problems.
hearing, back when Facebook was relatively new. I think it was Glenn Beck I heard was talking about this. He said he went to visit the campus, and he said he just couldn't believe it because they've got arcades and they've got Chinese restaurants and they've got massage therapists and it's like you're living on a cruise ship. And he said, how does work get done? He said, if you don't get the job done, you don't have a job.
Shocking.
When you do it, that's up to you. And if you can create a culture like that where
Yeah,
people don't need to be on the clock
for
to get
sure.
their job done, and on the other hand, it's not taking over their personal lives,
Yeah.
then that's the best of all worlds.
But also,
Well,
you do the math on some of those amenities, and they're not altruistic, right? We're giving everyone free lunch. Well, why? What does that cost? $6, and you got
yeah.
people that are
Right.
worth
That never leave.
$4 an hour that'll
Yeah.
Right.
exchange an
Right.
hour for
But
a
they're
turkey
still at their
sandwich.
desk.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But oh, I just forgot what I was gonna say. Well, it'll come back. Never mind.
Yeah. On the other
Right.
hand, yeah,
As soon as
Peter,
the
when you
conversation
take
ends,
those
you'll
things
remember.
away because you're saving the $6 and you're creating a culture where your employees feel resentful and unsupported and unappreciated and so they slack off in their jobs. So you're saving $5 here and you're costing yourself 100 over there.
right.
Back to pay for performance in
Yeah.
its own way. Yeah.
Well, okay, so you just reminded me of what it was that I wanted to say, that we grew up trading money for time. And it's a problem because now we think we're paying people for the hours that they're working when we should be paying them for the results of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't care how long it takes, as long as the result is there. But so many managers and leaders are so focused on, am I getting, the bang for my buck from a time standpoint? I used to have a boss who used to make us come back on Friday afternoon, by 4 o'clock. Why? We were in sales, outside sales. Why were we coming back? Because he didn't trust us to be working. And so he thought if we came back, we'd be working, which is ridiculous. But it's that mindset that we're trading, that what we're really paying for is the time people are
Yeah.
spending. It's
Yeah.
it's screwing the whole thing up, I think.
Well, and of course, on the other side of the equation, there are people that are paying for performance who aren't paying attention to quality of life for employees, and it's
Yeah,
running down employees who then can't really perform to
right,
their potential, right?
right.
So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
both sides of the equation need to be addressed.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to measure time than it is to measure productivity.
I
Yeah.
know it is. I know. You have to have real clarity around what it is you expect people to do, and there's got to be consequences attached. And that's part of the problem, is that the leaders don't want to have the tough conversations or really hold people accountable. And, you know,
Yeah. I mean, I have a neighbor who's he worked for Boeing, recently retired, and he's very, very bright engineer. And he would have these jobs to do on a project and he'd finish way ahead of schedule
yeah,
and they didn't know what to do with it.
let them go home.
Well,
Who cares? You know? Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
I could go down a whole other road. I won't.
Well, and then there's the whole other issue, which is, I mean, I guess some of my personal experience is going to sort of seep into this comment, but there are also supervisors and managers and executives um, who hold people accountable in the wrong ways and for the wrong reasons.
Sure.
You know, that and that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, people
Definitely.
need to be held accountable, but not under sort of a gun to their head for the wrong
Yeah.
reasons. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
vindictive
Well,
supervision.
yeah, that they're moving the goalposts when they're
Yep,
doing that. Right.
yep.
So,
That's probably the best and kindest thing they're doing.
yeah.
Yeah,
So is the bottom
setting up
line
failure.
that when you have leaders who give people enough freedom and flexibility and a certain amount of autonomy to do the jobs they're supposed to be doing, and who trust them to do that with some sort of verification or
Sure.
accountability.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of striking that balance.
Uh-huh.
That's how you create a healthy culture.
Yep.
And when
Well,
you
there's
have
a
a healthy
radical idea.
culture,
But
what's
that, but
that?
that,
There's a radical idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
no, but that balance of agency to accountability, right? Because the individual wants the agency, the organization wants the accountability.
Sure.
That's not a set point where we say, well, set the oven to 350 if you're baking chicken,
Sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
everybody, every organization, and even different times of the year or whatever, um, it's different, right? How much agency do you want a pilot to have? Not all
Yeah.
that much, right? You want there are places where you follow protocols, but someone that's more creative or a programmer or a writer, do you
Yeah.
really care if they're a night bird and they're up till 4 in the morning,
Right.
cranking it out?
Yeah.
I think that really depends, but we do have an industrial complex mindset of like, your boss bringing you in at 4 o'clock to chain you to your desk is the old industrial mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because you're not calling him on a, 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night when a client's emailing you and you're emailing back.
Right.
Hey, boss, look
Right.
what I did. Nor
Right.
should you. You should say, listen, my results speak for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But it's about the communication,
Yeah.
right? If we're communicating about it and we're respecting people and treating them like they have value, and there's a reason we hired them, and we're having the conversation around this is what we need at this time, this is what we need in this situation, this is why. The vast majority of people know that coming in, right? And
Right.
so they're going to come along, but they're also really going to come along because you're including them in the conversation, you're working with them on what is the best way for us to get there, wherever it is, we're trying to go. I do a lot of training with managers in a lot of companies, and the thing that I see every single time is upper management does not support that, tells them, do this, do that, the other thing, and then doesn't support them when they do. And the communication is so lacking that the people on the ground floor who are doing the work feel really disconnected from the goal and can't see how what they do directly impacts the outcome.
Yeah. Well, and bringing it back around to ethics, the broad stroke thing that I think brings all this together is that, to maybe oversimplify and maybe not, people do what's reinforced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
No
really
matter what the rhetoric is, people do what's reinforced.
Yeah.
that's
Right.
really what drove me to stake out my place in ethics. The hope that if we can help leaders be more ethical, create a more ethical culture, healthier culture, then maybe that'll trickle out into the surrounding uh, culture outside of business,
Yeah.
and we won't have as many scandals in politics and in sports and in entertainment. Um, because the one thing we can all agree on is we want to make more money. And if we recognize that creating an ethical culture is actually good for business, um,
Yeah.
then okay, if everybody doesn't have the most pristine motives for being ethical, we can live with that.
Yeah, I guess I've certainly also fallen in the camp. I would rather see a good thing done for questionable reasons than not see a good thing done.
Yeah.
And of course, ideally we'd like both, but yeah, that's a good,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, of
that's a good
course.
first
Right.
step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. That would be the win.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we pulled back from the abyss of despair.
We ended on a high note. You did it.
That's quick. Let's
Yeah.
end this before anybody says anything.
Yeah.
Just for the record, we did not bet on it, and we didn't have a fixed bet on when we
Yeah.
had a high note.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
that's
just
our story
doing that.
anyway.
Have
Yeah.
a pool. How long we think the episode will go.
The marathon, right? It's a telethon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for a lively and thoughtful conversation. For those of you who are watching and listening, if you have a topic you'd like us to take up at some future point, please go to my website, ethicsninja.com, use the contact information, submit your idea if it's compelling. We'll definitely use it for a future episode. If you would like access to the backstage conversations that sometimes take place, go to my Substack, become a premium member. For now, Christopher Bauer, Diane Helbig, Peter Winick, thanks so much for your time, your thought, your wisdom. And until next time, we encourage you to continue grappling with the grave.